Now then, you're very welcome back. Mr. Pat Nevin is with us. Good evening.
Good evening, Joe. How are you doing?
Yeah, very well. We were just there looking at the maths. So at his current rate of scoring, 72 Premier League goals for Erling Haaland if he can keep this pace up.
Yes, I think the phrase scary is the one that's kind of used by everyone. I'm sure we talked about how we expected them. I expected them to do incredibly well, but it's just blowing everyone away. And it's, the brilliance of him, and he's got everything. But on top of that, just stick on the creativity that's behind them. You know, that they're going to give him time and time again so many chances. It's just an incredible thing. I read a piece the other day. They're saying that he is all the best strikers all rolled into one. And it is difficult, isn't it? You start to think, who's better than that? Who's had all those things together that he's got? Absolutely everything. The pace is just mad, absolutely mad. You know, the natural striking ability is just as good as anyone you can think of, you know, historically. And then you put the physique on top of it, and then you stick a brilliant team on top of that as well. That one problem that he had, well, people talk about his head, and maybe was a question before, obviously no more. But the other problem was, you know, he wasn't playing a huge amount of games every season. And you look up now and you think, Pep made 4 changes and didn't take him off. He's not wrapping them up in cotton wool. He thinks he's absolutely fine now to go and play as many games. And it's frightening. I mean, if you were a team trying to come up with a plan to stop him, I mean, we've thought about it before. You know, yeah, maybe you can stop him. You're talking 3 and 4 players, and you can't leave Foden, you can't leave De Bruyne, you can't leave all them on their own. It's a stunning thing to watch, and it's. And I don't think it's an arrogance of all of us because we hadn't been watching him before. A lot of us, we've been watching quite closely and thinking, yeah, he's very, very, very good. He'll be the next superstar. But he looks as if he's going to be beyond that, doesn't he? He's not a hyperstar. You're talking the numbers that, you know, the likes of Messi and Ronaldo got. He could get there and eclipse them, and it wouldn't shock any of us now.
It was interesting. Guardiola mentioned the medical department at City having sorted out whatever issues were there with Haaland previously, and that he's more than fit enough now to play lots of 90-minute games. So they have addressed that issue, and as you say, it's suddenly so exciting to watch. It's like must-watch television now. If you're a football fan, you're now suddenly checking, well, when are Man City playing, with a renewed kind of interest, and like, I need to sit down and watch this, because in 20, 30 years you want to be able to say, well, I watched it in real time and I watched him explode into whatever he's going to explode into. And even the De Bruyne cross for Haaland, even that, like, there was so much in that. I'm sure like the football lover in you could break that goal down for 5 minutes.
Yeah, but one of the joys when you watch now, because I wouldn't be looking at it almost as him. I'd be looking at it as somebody creating for him. And I've been lucky over the years being able to, you know, have some good centre forwards ahead of me. And you learn quite quickly their moves and where they go. Exactly, they stop after a while, because you look at De Bruyne gets the ball, and he just takes off and hairs. You know, he just takes off and goes. He doesn't look at De Bruyne now. He doesn't have to. He goes, right, it's okay, it'll arrive, and he just takes off and goes. Now it doesn't arrive every single time, but he's there every single time. And we chatted earlier on in the year, earlier in the season. And I was getting a bit miffed with Foden, because Foden a couple of times hadn't played him when that was the right ball to play. And you think, wait a minute, De Bruyne would have played that ball. And by the way, Foden, you can see that ball. But even Foden now, I think he's getting it all, and he's adding what he's brilliant at as well. But that lovely moment when you're a creative player and you get a bit of space, and your head just gets up, and you just see this picture, and it's kind of almost easy. Yeah. It's almost too easy for De Bruyne, because these perfect balls before, you know, had to be right on the foot, right, you know, be it outside his foot, inside his foot, but it had to be slide rule, and they had to be like within millimetres. Don't need to be millimetres anymore, because you put it in, you see that stretch that he does.
Yeah.
And he's had 2 or 3 of them now. It's a stretch. You think, no, you can't get to that. Oh my God, you've got to. And by the way, you're in complete control when you've got there. So you're not aiming at like inches anymore. De Bruyne is now aiming at this big cavernous space for his abilities. And when you see that, I mean, De Bruyne must be absolutely and it's not just De Bruyne. There's Gundogan, there's all the rest of them. But for De Bruyne, it's a dream scenario because he's one of those players that I absolutely suspect he enjoys creating a goal at least as much as he scores goals. De Bruyne, so he sees that in front of him and just thinks, "Give me the ball, give me space, I'll find him." And you don't even need. That's the other thing. Play with strikers before you think he's marked, right? Like, for two of mine were Aldridge and Kerry Dixon, right? So they were international strikers, right? And you kind of know where they're going to go. See, with Haaland now, you can put it in there where normally actually that striker won't get it because he's well marked. It's all right, put it in there. He'll probably get it. He'll probably brush him off the ball. He'll probably make a move that's unstoppable. And it's when you see people somebody tried to bump into him the other day. And I remember doing this when I was playing. A couple of people that I used to say the phrase, you play against them and you hit them and it's like hitting the wrong type of material. Like, do you remember Barry Horn used to play for Everton and Wales and the rest of it? You remember I'd go and bump him in training and it actually hurt. It was like hitting a wall, because the physical, it felt not like human, it felt something else. There was a guy I used to play called Doug Rugby years ago and he was a bit like that. And you just hit him and you bounce off him. And I'm watching top quality players hitting this guy and just bouncing off him.
Yeah.
Like flies. It's ridiculous.
You make such an interesting observation there on De Bruyne, who maybe felt that the ball previously had to be perfection. And now he's almost stretching the limits of his own imagination, what's possible here. Because that crossing moment, that felt like he was too narrow and the angle wasn't quite right. And it wasn't inviting enough for him to whip it in as he so often does from that general part of the pitch. But it was almost like he said, well, it's Haaland, so I'm going to let's it's like he brought a new Ferrari and he was like, let's really open her up here and see if he can reach this one. And boom, he does.
He does. And it's a higher version of things that a number of us have done before when we think, right, I'm not putting that ball through to him because he's not going to get it.
Yeah.
So there's no point in putting it through. I'm not going to play that ball. And you do compute these things really quickly. Even as mere mortals would compute that quite quickly. Then you add it on top of that. No, you're not talking about mere mortals. You're talking about De Bruyne here. He'll compute that so quickly and just keep on doing it. And the limitations are unthinkable. And I would dearly love, like I think a lot of people, just to see him get a whole season. No injuries at all for either De Bruyne or Haaland. And again, it's just taking nothing away from everyone else that's doing it as well. But, just give them a full season where nothing actually particularly goes wrong with injuries. And you will see records that, they often talk about XXX in the Premier League era. You'll be dumping that really soon. Premier League era will mean nothing soon. It's like full stop. The best you've seen. I was so excited about it. And I think everybody is.
Yeah, it's amazing. It is really exciting. In almost any other context, you'd be talking about just how bloody good Phil Foden is.
Yeah, I was thinking about that if you're Phil Foden. There's a great picture in some of the papers, and it had Foden beaming, and he's a kind of. We've got a word in Scotland called gallus. It's like cocky, confident, really sure of himself, really pleased with himself, kind of thing, but in a nice way, right? And that's him. That's Phil Foden, and he's like a wee boy cuddled in. He's way up there. He's gigantic beside him. He's cuddling in, and already Haaland's treating him like a wee brother in a kind of nice kind of way. And even though he's a fabulous player himself, who's just scored a hat trick against Manchester United and played brilliantly as well. So all of those things together, and you keep on looking at Haaland and you think, what age is he?
I know. What
can he do? Where can he go from here? It's unthinkable. See, if you take worst case scenario, he gets an injury and it affects one part of his game, I think he'll still be okay. What if he loses that massive, gigantic pace and instead of being stupidly quick, it's just quite quick? It's going to be all right. He's still going to score a whole barrel load of goals.
It's funny, because certain Irish football fans are understandably, I would say, bristling because Ireland are playing Norway in a friendly in Dublin next month, and the thing is being marketed almost as this is your chance to see Haaland in Dublin, and we're saying, hang on, let's support our team first. But I think with each passing week, that marketing ploy might have a certain good sense. One question on Manchester United: this doesn't feel like as kind of crisis provoking as the previous hammerings they've taken maybe over any spell over the last year, 18 months have seemed to kind of prompt, because people recognise City were just that bloody good and they're just that much better than them. So I don't know if this doesn't quite plunge Ten Hag back into crisis, does it?
No, I don't think so. Even though, I mean, it's 6-3, and I think everyone's agreed that was 6-3 going on 8-1.
Yeah.
They made the 4 changes when they were getting battered, and they got a couple of goals back. So, who are Manchester United gauging themselves against? And it isn't Man City. Just they'd love to. They'd absolutely, and every team would love to, but you kind of can't at the moment. One thing I would say about United, though, just for what they've got and what they've had for a few years, the teams that are going to cause a little bit of trouble or more than a little bit of trouble for Manchester City are the ones that will say, sod it, we're going to go for you. We're going to go and chase you. We're going to try and close you down. We're going to really hammer in. And what Newcastle did early in the season was, that was good. That was interesting. That they're not utterly and completely invincible. But you need to have a team that can do that have that sort of attitude, and have those sort of players that have got that energy. And that's not Man United. It isn't Manchester United. They've not got those levels. Other teams, one or two other teams, have actually got them. I think maybe Brighton at some point might give them a wee bit of a push, and one or two others might give them a wee bit of push. But you can't see. You'd be surprised if like Chelsea did, or even Liverpool, the way they're playing just now. But the hope is that they improve.
Yeah.
But the teams that are going to give City some questions are the ones that are not going to sit off them or a bit sluggish when they move it. It's the ones that are going to try and play a high tempo 90 against them. Easy to say, hard to do, but that's the only way you get close.
On Liverpool then, a 3-3 draw against Brighton. Jurgen Klopp afterwards, of all the various issues, he cited a certain kind of no man's quality to Liverpool's defensive shape. He said we didn't really press very high or with intensity, nor did we defend deep with tight spacing and limited room. He said we were somewhere in between, and there was space between the lines, space in behind, space everywhere. So that was his diagnosis of what went wrong, and I'm sure there's something in that. But also, it just really does feel increasingly like that midfield. And look, this is ruthless, and Klopp, who loves these players as individuals, I'm sure would hate the thought of it, as would Liverpool fans. But if you're being ruthless, it feels increasingly that midfield needs tearing up.
I think he seemed to, over the summer, you go for changes in a squad and a group, and he's added a wee bit more, creativity. I think he's tried to get a wee bit more creativity, and he had to make a few changes, and he has tried a few, but it's not been at the back. But it's kind of noticeable. I mean, I remember talking a wee while back about worrying a wee bit about Van Dijk because he started to do certain things that certain players that are slightly older do, where he was completely imperious before that. Now, he's still the best defender, and he's still one of the best defenders in the league, and he's still one of the best defenders in the world, all that. But you begin to see this dropping off quite regularly now. So this was the guy who was kind of holding them together completely, absolutely holding them together. So Van Dijk doing that, I think the midfield starts looking around a wee bit as well. So it's not Van Dijk's fault. It's just he completely and utterly allowed them. Remember, they'd always go 2 and 2 because the fullbacks would go. Well, they're kind of not doing that now.
Okay.
Alexander-Arnold's coming back a wee bit now. You probably know, well, he's come back and then he's not tracking very well.
Yeah.
He's coming back now. And so they've kind of got one less attacking option than they had before. So the whole balance of it is kind of fallen back. And what has become very apparent now, and I think it's kind of obvious to everyone, is that for all the great stuff that Trent Alexander's going to give you, he's not a great defender. He just isn't a great defender. He switches off a lot of the time. He's not a natural defender. The ones that it's in their DNA that they will cover all the time. There was a couple of goals I was watching. I was just thinking, why are you just running by? I can't remember which goal it was. It was one of the goals at the weekend there. And I think it was Matip. And they lose the goal. And Matip doesn't turn into goalkeeper. He just turns straight round. The camera cuts away. He just turns straight round just to Trent Alexander-Arnold. Where are you? And he's like 25 yards away up the field. He said, no, why are you not here? You've left.
Do you remember Napoli, Pat, where someone knocked the ball around Alexander-Arnold and this is in on goal almost, and he just was like, I'm out of the game now, I'm going to pause. Like these are, I know Klopp made a very convincing defence of him a few days ago, and how, oh look, he's meant to be higher up the pitch, etc. But there are certain moments where, as you say, it's not excusable.
Well, if you're caught up the pitch, which they do when they're attacking and someone breaks on you, but not during normal play when you're out of possession and you've got the players over the other side and you cover around.
Yeah.
There isn't an excuse there. There isn't. That's not a good enough reason. And Jurgen Klopp's not daft. He knows that himself. That's the thing you do. You cover around and you give your centre-backs a chance. You don't leave them one-on-one so someone can sneak in behind them if they're drawn in a little bit. And it, I think the manager has to make a decision now. Is the decision going to be, do you want Trent Alexander-Arnold to be that player still and just leave his defence? Because you're going to start losing. You're going to keep on losing a lot of goals if you keep doing that, because they're far too stretched now. And the cover, I mean, at the weekend, did they have Fabinho and Henderson?
Yeah. And
you'd think, well, wait a minute, that ought to work.
Yeah.
You've got two of them there. And they always play this like a 4-3-3. You wonder now if a 4-2-3-1 would be better, because if you've got the two of them sitting in there, I know it has an effect on, the amount of players you're getting forward. But if you get a 4-2-3-1, then the fullbacks can go and you've got two players that can cover there. And you might actually need that now. And that's something that I think Klopp will definitely be considered, because he's not a stupid manager. And he's adapted quite a few times as it is. That high intensity stuff that they played for a long time and then they couldn't do it anymore for a while, and then he adapted and that worked, the adaptation. It's looking like time for an adaptation. And it'd be intriguing to see what he does. It might be personnel, as you say, but you're right, the midfield, they probably just need a little tweak. And I have to say, I'd be tempted if I was him to do the 4-2-3-1 to give a couple of bits of cover in front of the defence.
Interesting. You have a habit of saying something like that and then 2 weeks later it happens, so I will keep that in mind. The irony of this discussion is that Arsenal are top of the table and they get like a quick mention at the end still. 3-1 winners against Spurs. I think everybody increasingly enjoys watching this Arsenal team and has now a confidence that Arteta's building something real. This isn't just, they're having a good time. Sorry to hit you with a specific question, but I did watch the game and I thought, I've got to ask him about this. This whole Zinchenko pops into midfield and Xhaka pushes on routine, and they did it at Old Trafford as well. Why does that work so well for them? What's the thinking in all that? And then Arsenal broadly?
Well, Zinchenko's not a fullback. Everyone got in the habit of thinking he was a fullback. You go and watch him with Ukraine, he doesn't play fullback. He's just not a fullback. He's much more comfortable in that position. So when he vacates that area and comes in, he's not a kind of lumpy fullback walking into that area. He's a right good midfielder who's creative in that area, who's clever and knows how to close down, and he's quick and he tackles well, he reads the play really well. So you ask a number of players to do that sort of thing. That can backfire, by the way.
Yeah.
He did that in the Champions League final against Chelsea, and they blew it for him. It absolutely blew it for him.
And how so, Pat? How does it backfire?
Well, he backfired that big gap behind.
Okay. It's simple as that. They identify that, yeah.
Yeah. So you eventually identify, because lots of teams over the last couple of years have identified, again, back to Trent Alexander-Arnold, they identified that he kept on going, so they just popped the ball over the top of him, whether it was there or not, just put it over there and chase it. And then you drag the whole defence. So you see where the problem is. The difficulty is doing that. Why that's difficult to do against Manchester City and now Arsenal, because you ain't got the ball. They've got the ball. You can't pop over the top if they've got the ball the whole time. And that's what he's been clever to do just now. Hold on, everyone. Hold your horses with Arsenal. It was brilliant against Spurs. And I'll hold my hands up and say I was surprised at how much better they were than Spurs on the day. And they were much, much better. But how many real tests? That was a good test. But tests away from home, watched them at Brighton start the season, not that great after the first 25 minutes. And then they obviously played well but didn't get the result against Manchester United away. Look, they're good. I won't be surprised at top 3. And I suspect top 4 anyway, whatever happens. Stay up there and stave off Manchester City. I don't think many of us think that's going to happen.
No. How many points are City going to win the league by?
Oh, God. They could do it by 10, 15 if Liverpool don't. Somebody needs to go on an amazing run, because City are going to do what they've been doing for the last number of years. But I don't think anyone else can do it now. I don't think. Well, Liverpool obviously are not doing it now. I don't think Arsenal are quite good. But then I I'm ready to be surprised by Arsenal.
Okay.
And I'll be impressed with them.
Okay. Well, we'll watch this space. We're just out of time. Thanks, Emil.
Pleasure.
Cheers. Pat Nevin with us, as he is every Monday, and our football show coverage is brought to you by Sky. Watch every live Premier League game this season. Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky. Watch all the football you love, including the biggest Premier League games every weekend. Live on Sky.
Talking history.